welcome to the Parsha Pairings with Jeff and Sherry. I'm Jeff Friedlander.
And I'm Sherry, and we're so glad you've joined us today. We want to encourage you to be sure to go and subscribe to our channel, and then click the little bell on there so it'll notify you every time we upload a new video. And then we also would love if you would like and share. If these teachings are ministering to you, please do share them with others and be sure to like it and let us know what you think about it in the comments.
Yeah, we love the comments, and if you want to get our app, you can go to wherever you get your apps, and down just type in B1 Ministries, and you'll be able to get the app from that. This week's Parsha is called Parsha Korach, which means bald. It's out of the Torah portion is Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 through chapter 18, verse 32. The Haftorah is 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 14 through chapter 12, verse 22. And the Brit Hadashah is Romans 13, 1 through 7. We talked in our last teaching in chapter 16, dealing with all the rebellions. If you missed that one, you'll want to catch that back up. Make sure you go and review that because it really sets up the rest of what's going on. At the end of that chapter, we see that that Aaron has a staff, and God is going to do some miracles with that. And that's what this chapter, Numbers chapter 17, is all about. It begins in chapter 17, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and get 12 staffs from them, one from the leader of each of their ancestral tribes. Write the name of each man on his staff. On the staff of Levi, write Aaron's name. For there must be one staff for the head of each ancestral tribes. Place them in the tent of meeting, in the front of the ark of the covenant law, where I meet with you. The staff belonging to the man I choose will sprout, and I will rid myself of this constant grumbling against you by the Israelites." In other words, he says, Moses, we're about to put an end to all this mess that's been going on. Yeah. The whole last chapter, all the things that we dealt with. We read one chapter, by the way. We have to assume that was over several months period of time. Many things were going on. And Moses is not only tired of it, but God clearly is. Right. And he's going to establish a clear authority without any more questions, and he's going to use a physical sign to do it. He's going to do a supernatural miracle and use a staff. So he's got these folks coming. Yeah.
And that is a pattern we're beginning to see emerging in these chapters, is God has already established the priesthood. He's already established the Leviticals, Levites. He's already established where everybody's going to be. They're just not satisfied with it. Nope. So now we're seeing these physical signs. We got the tzitzit and these last two parshas. We're now about to see another physical example. We saw Korach swallowed up, physical. We're seeing God bring into the physical. You won't accept just what I say. Yeah. So here's some physical representations of what I mean and what I'm showing you. Yeah.
So he brings them in. He's got 12 staffs. He writes a name of each of the tribal leaders on it. And for Levi's staff, he writes the name Aaron. And now they're in there. So Sherry, what's the word staff in Hebrew?
So this word is mateh, and we know and we've kind of gathered that the staff represents the authority. Yeah. The authority of who the person's carrying it. We've seen Aaron's staff actually carry authority in the courts of Pharaoh. Mm-hmm. Before the plagues even began on their first encounter with Pharaoh. Remember, he throws his staff down, it turns into a snake, and then the magicians do the same thing. Theirs turn into snakes, but his staff eats up his snake eats their snake. So that was actually Aaron's staff. I don't know if maybe sometimes we don't catch that in the reading. We think of it as Moses's, but this is Aaron's staff that does that in Egypt. Yeah. So now we're here with this same staff being laid before the Lord for him to affirm his priesthood. Now, what the test is that God says is he's prophesying this miracle. Listen, lay them before me in the staff or the rod, the mateh, that I cause to sprout. This word sprout is parech in Hebrew, and it means to sprout or to blossom. This word is also used again in some other scriptures where it's connected to the flourishing of the righteous. That's right. David picks this up in Psalm 43:2. He says, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree." That's that word parach. The righteous are gonna flourish. He picks it up again in Psalm 72:7. "May the righteous flourish in his days. Let shalom abound." So there's this, we see this future use of this, that this flourishing, this parek, is connected to righteousness.
Yeah, so blossoming, sprouting means to flourish, and it becomes a prophetic word for us as well.
Right, and we see that in Isaiah 11:1, and this is a prophecy about the Messiah. And it says, then a shoot will come forth out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch will bear fruit, will parak, out of his roots.
Same word.
This same word. So we've got this idea later in Isaiah, he's going to link into this idea of sprouting and blossoming, that out of this another, actually the word stem is not really a great translation. It's actually the word, it's a stump.
Yeah.
So it's after Jesse is the beginning of the royal lineage. David comes from that line. We'll see later that the Messiah, Yeshua, comes from that line. But the prophecy in Isaiah is saying that once even the tree has been cut down, this line of Jesse's been cut down, don't worry.
And so
out of that's going to sprout.
Yeah.
What's going to walk in righteousness and live in righteousness.
And so this is a powerful truth, because when you think about it, what is a staff? What is this piece of wood? Mm-hmm. Is it alive? No.
It's been cut away from its source.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's been cut away from the source. It has no water. It has no nutrients. It has no bread. It has no nourishment. It's dead. The staff is dead.
Right.
And this is kind of the point
so
here.
The only way
the spiritual parallels here should not be missed.
Well, the only way that Aaron's staff is going to have life is because God brings life from death.
There has to be a supernatural move in establishing the flourishing, the blossoming, and the authority.
Right.
Think about that now. Just make sure you hold that in your head as we go through a few more of these scriptures. The flourishing, the blossoming, and the authority from death to life. All
and
right.
I think, as we do begin to put that together, that the test is this piece of wood that is dead is going to be laid before the Lord. He's going to bring life out of that dead piece of wood, out of that authority. Isaiah, who's using that same word of flourishing and sprouting, is prophesying even once the tree is gone and the stump looks like it's got nothing, out of that I'm going to bring forth life.
And we know this is a prophecy, messianic prophecy.
And we know that Yeshua himself was laid down into death.
Yeah.
He was laid down and cut off from everything. And it was the power of God that raised him up, that sprouted him back up to fulfill the prophecy that's being laid down as a foundation in this idea with Aaron as the high priest.
Exactly right. Verse 8 says, the next day Moses entered the tent and saw that Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi, not only had sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds.
It's amazing.
Then Moses brought out all the staffs from the Lord's presence to the Israelites. They looked at them, and each of their leaders took their own staff. They're like, yeah, we lost. That's it.
So here's something fun to look at. We're going to do a little bit of a looking into what could this possibly mean. This is no mistake God chose almonds. No mistake he chose almonds. Not only does it, like you said, not only does it sprout, but it's like producing fruit.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about an almond tree.
Yeah.
So almonds are prevalent in Israel, and they are the first tree to bloom out of the winter months. They're kind of the announcement that spring is coming.
Yeah.
You've come out of this months where there's no growth, the dead of winter we talk about, and they're the first ones to blossom.
Yeah.
The other cool thing about an almond tree is that it blooms the flowers before the leaves. Usually we see leaves first, then flowers, then fruit. Yeah. With an almond tree, you see flowers and fruit, then leaves. There's an order shift here. Yeah. You've got fruit first, then you have the covering that comes. So we see this idea that God is saying this almond tree, this branch of Aaron, is producing out of this death, out of this wintertime. It's announcing something is coming, because remember, the Israelites are not, this generation, they're not going into this promised land they just looked at. They're about to enter into a winter season. But God is affirming my promises are true. Now, how else do we know this? This is so fun. This is where knowing Hebrew really brings some fun ideas to us. When we look at, jump over to Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 11. This is another prophecy given about the coming destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon. Jeremiah prophesies over Babylon, and then he's also post-Babylon, some words he speaks. But
he says, "Moreover, the word of Adonai came to me, saying, What do you see, Jeremiah? I answered, I see an almond branch. Then Adonai said to me, You have seen correctly, for I am watching over my word to perform it."
So the word here for almond in Hebrew is shachak. Is that correct? Is shakid. Shakid.
Yeah, shakid.
The word for watch in this same passage is shokid. Now, what we need to understand is that in Hebrew there were no vowels.
Yeah.
So this is the exact same three-letter root word that he's using here. One of them means almond and one means watch. So what are we seeing? What is Jeremiah saying here? He's saying, out of this, there's going to be, the almond is going to branch again. You're going to see life again. Even though Babylon's coming, they're going to destroy. Why? Because I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch over and make sure my word is true. Now, if you notice, an almond looks like a little eyeball.
It does look like a little eye.
They look like little eyeballs. So you've got this whole wordplay going on this particular vegetation that looks like an eye, that springs forth out of death, and that also carries that same root word, Hebrew root word, to mean watch. What is God doing? He's going to fulfill His word.
Yeah.
Now let's jump back into our parsha. This week's parsha.
Let me jump in and say something before you do that. So if you think about Yeshua in the fulfillment of all these prophecies, right? So we have the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, killed, crucified, dead, and buried. He's dead. He's done. He's over. And in the idea of being the branch and the stump and the one brought back to life, the announcement, as you brought out, of winter is over. Yeshua was crucified at Passover, which is the first of the year in the Hebrew calendar, and it's also the beginning of spring. It's the first spring festival, the one that comes out of winter. So even in the death, he's killed at the beginning. He comes out of the grave, raised by the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, and that makes him alive. And now he is given the spiritual eyes to see all things, and it establishes, just as it did with Aaron, it establishes the authority of the high priest, that he is the high priest in heaven. Right. In Hebrews, it tells us that he became our high priest, just as Aaron's staff announces he is the high priest. So we have this beautiful picture of an almond, an eye, a watching, a stump raised from the dead supernaturally, establishing authority and establishing that the Lord is Lord of all. And the Messiah fulfills all of this. Now, I would not presume to know that Aaron or Moses had any idea how God was writing this script, thousands of years before Messiah would come, that this little branch, this little staff, this little almond example could be connected all the way through the prophecies of Isaiah, the prophecies of Jeremiah, right into the New Testament world of Yeshua in the first century. But there is no question, you can't make this stuff up. Right. This was here, it was beautiful, and it's part of this. It's the story of God as He weaves together His intricacies. It's really beautiful. I love
that. And I think one of the things I'll pull out of the Jeremiah prophecy is him saying, I'm watching over my word.
Yeah.
And in this testing of Aaron's rod, it is him watching over to accomplish what started back in the garden.
Yeah.
This is the story of God we're watching unfold, and He is guarding it to protect it, to make sure that access back into the tree of life is preserved for us.
That's right.
He's watching over it to make sure, and this is one of the places where He watches over it by making this rod, by making Aaron's staff bloom.
So Aaron's authority rests as a sign to all the rebellious ones. Yeshua obviously rests as a sign to all those that are rebellious. I came back from the dead. And you need to know I'm coming again. Verse 12 says, the Israelites said to Moses, we will die. We are all lost. We're all lost. Anyone who even comes near the tabernacle will die. And this is how the chapter actually ends. And they ask the question, are we all just to perish?
Right, because just before that, after the rod is budded, God instructs him to go and put it back in front of the testimony, the Ark of the Testimony.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to rest there, and it says why. Why would they even say that they're going to die? Well, verse 10 tells us, put Aaron's staff in front of the Ark of the Covenant of the Law. Why? To be kept as a sign for the rebellious.
Yeah.
They're going, we are the rebellious.
Yeah.
Wow. This is not good for us.
Yeah.
But I want to link that into Yeshua also. Because this budding branch of Aaron's, this high priest authority, rest in front of the presence of God. And it rests as a sign to the people to say, don't grumble against this authority again.
That's right.
Don't grumble against this ordained authority I have established. And when we think about Yeshua and we look back to post-resurrection, he's on the earth for 40 days, but then he ascends. Where does he ascend to? Back to the right hand of the Father. He's also resting before the Father. He, as the authority, is resting what? As a sign of the promise to come. Yeah. When we look to Yeshua, we also should have this fear of us, oh my gosh, were it not for him standing there in intercession for us, were it not for him being at the right hand, we would incur all the wrath of God on us. But the Messiah stands as a testimony, just as Aaron's rod stands as a sign and a testimony to the people. And we read in Psalm 110, 1, Adonai declares to my Lord, this is another prophecy about the Messiah, sit at my right hand until what? I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. The Messiah is this one standing, waiting for Adonai to send him to go back, get your bride, and your enemies are going to be a footstool. So when we read about this budding of Aaron's rod, it is setting a pattern for the story God is building. He's affirming the priesthood. As Yeshua ascended and went back to sit at the right hand of the Father, it affirms the story and the authority that God has given him.
Amen.
This is not just a random story. This has connections all throughout the grand story that God is revealing to us.
It certainly does. And so as the Parsha, this chapter concludes, we realize that the last week's Parsha and this week's Parsha all connect kind of the big story of rebellion being put down, and the prophecy of the future authority of the King of Kings. And then we will move into how God is going to begin to take care of those who are now well established as the authorities of Israel. Until next time, then, we thank you for being with us. God bless you, and shalom.
Shalom.